Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video. Myself, Jonathan, MS Pearce, Ukraine War News Update. First part thereof for the 9th of January 2025. It's insane at the moment. I need more sleep. I need more time to gather myself because the world has gone nuts. Can Elon Musk get the hell off Twitter? Can the US stop threatening to invade allies and threatening to engage in economic war with the rest of the world? Can people just calm down and work out what to do with Ukraine, what to do with Russia, and therefore what to do with China? That's all we need to worry about right now, or maybe a little bit of climate change and stopping raging fires in Los Angeles. Sadly enough, actually, I had an email from someone I know, 74-year-old who lost his entire house, everything. 74, he's got to start his life again in the Palisades fire. Eddie Tabash, who I've interviewed actually on my other channel. Really sad news there, but the world is going absolutely nuts. Let's try and get a handle on what's going on in Ukraine. We'll start with the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply, of course. You can find them on the description to the video below. 1,430 personnel loss is a significant tick downwards. It's still a massive number, of course, 1,400. So that's over the 1,300 threshold I used to hold. Like the 1,000 to 1,300 is a nuts number. It's over 1,000. It's crazy. 1,300 is the top. Now we're seeing like 2,000, regularly 1,700s. Here's 1,430. It's a big number. Just a little bit lower than it was. 17 tanks is a massive number of tanks to lose in one day. And I think there's probably a lot to do with what the Russians are doing in Kursk. I need to look at this today. I need to look into mapping and whatnot to do another mapping update. But there have been some huge Russian attacks in Kursk. So 47th Brigade Magura shared footage of their strike on a column near Malaya Lochnia. So that's the area where they're attacking from the west and attacking from the north to try and cut off the Ukrainians in that corner. And several other targets in the same area of Kursk region. Reports say there were 6 separate assaults involving around 50 pieces of equipment. Lots of equipment can be seen damaged or destroyed. Indeed, if you want to see some footage of that, this is the Magura footage, and there are many troops. There are lots of equipment in various different places. Just incredible numbers of attacks right across the front line. And the Russians, I think, are really... It appears that the Ukrainians caught them off guard, attacked. I don't know how major the Ukrainian attacks have been in the whole sort of scheme of things, but the Russians have just gone crazy back at the Ukrainians up in Kursk, it appears. Like, okay, you're attacking us, we're going to attack you even more. It might be a clever way to draw out the Russians so that they can attrit them in these massive numbers. I don't know if that was part of what they were planning, but it seems to be what is happening. Anyway, 17 tanks lost, 16 troop-carrying AFVs. So it's really rare that you get more tanks than AFVs. And then we have 36 pieces of artillery, which is above the daily average. So tanks and artillery well above the daily average. Troop-carrying AFVs are snipped below it. 80 vehicles and fuel tanks are very high, as we would expect, given that they do use a lot of these vehicles to do their attacking. If we're looking at other, there's no Andrew Perpetua loss list at the moment. Just check out his feed, make sure he hasn't quickly put one there. No. So we will move on to other data pieces. Now, anecdote, etc., etc. PS01, or one of the people who was fundraising in our campaign for the trucks, all 200s. So what happened is the Ukrainians have, in the Kursk direction, managed to either get a Russian radio or tune into the Russian radio. And they're hearing here literally on this. I mean, it's in Russian, so I can't translate it for you. But apparently it says all 200s. That means dead. The group was effed to bits. One survived. After, end quote. After destroying a stronghold in the Kursk direction, Ukrainian soldiers captured an enemy radio station. And we managed to hear a lot of interesting things on the air. Someone says this is good news, but not sure if it's true, etc., etc. And actually, PS01 says, well, this one comes from a Russian chat, and it's a similar story. And the quote from this other video, Russian video, 500 people were killed here last week. The conscripts told me. Russian servicemen asked, and that's the end of the quote. Russian servicemen asked for permission to roll back, but the commander does not allow it. It appears that there are multiple claims from Russians that they are losing incredible numbers of people. In fact, someone's done a translation of this. Let's pop into the video. Start it from the beginning. They say that Petrovic said that they were effed up, that one of them was left alive, is what they're listening to there. So yeah, that's basically the comment there. Just one left alive in a stronghold that was taken out. They say that they were effed up, he says then again. So yeah, that is just that small quote excerpt taken out from listening to the Russians there. Russians evidently losing a lot of both people and equipment in the Kursk region. We have evidence of that. Forbes is reporting that up to 400 Russo-North Korean troops lost in a single attack on Ukrainian positions in Kursk Oblast. Again, don't know if this is 100% true, but Forbes is reporting it. A combined force of Russian paratroopers and North Korean infantry sustained devastating losses assaulting the contested Makhanovka village, and this is somewhere that was on the eastern side, sort of near Sudzha. I'd reported that there were heavy losses there the other day when I did my last mapping update, and this appears to be filtering out now. So the Russians are losing tremendous numbers of troops and equipment in the Kursk region. That's reflected in the general staff figures. It's reflected in video evidence. It's reflected in radio evidence. It's reflected in visually confirmed losses that we are seeing from Andrew Perpetua and his team and others as well. So it is tough for the Russians in Kursk. The question is always, how bad is it for the Ukrainians? How much attrition are they suffering? Because the Russians are attacking en masse. I mean, these are huge assaults, right? So that's always a question. But the Russians certainly are having a hard time of it up there. Now, Russian channels report that on December, and of course, the Ukrainians are under the cosh right around the rest of the front line. I mean, there's certain pockets where the Ukrainians are pushing back a little bit here, a little bit there. You're wondering whether that's just opportunistic, whether there's any sense of culmination, or just random and anomalous, because the Russians are still making tremendous gains, comparatively speaking, in some of these areas further to the south. So Russian channels have reported. Remember, there was that purple patch for the Ukrainians where I wasn't quite sure how many helicopters were taken out, but it seems like there are claims that 4 were destroyed or crashed and 1 was damaged. Initially it's 1, then it was claimed that 2 helicopters were lost as a result. That Sea Baby with the rockets on top firing at the helicopters out to sea. 2 were lost and 1 was damaged. Then there was a claim that a Russian helicopter was shot down by its own air defences. And then there was another claim of another loss, but I wasn't quite sure whether that was actually that same air defence loss there. So certainly at least 3 helicopters taken down, maybe 4 and 1 damaged. Anyway, the Russian channels are now confirming at least some of this. So they're reporting that on December the 31st, just one day. So remember, what I was claiming there was over a number of days. On the 31st, 8 Russian pilots were killed, 2 Mi-8 crews were downed by sea drones, and later, 1 Mi-28 did not return home. That could be the air defense one. And then those 2 downed by sea drones. 8 pilots or 8 crew members is going to be really significant. So you've got 1 attack helicopter, well, more of an attack helicopter than these other Mi-8s, but the Mi-8s also used in that way as well. The crew members, it's bad enough losing the helicopters, but losing experienced crew members is something that they will struggle to replace as well. So that is apparently, appears to be pretty good confirmation there of what has been previously claimed by the Ukrainians. Now here we've got, and I have seen some footage very similar to this about a year ago, to be perfectly honest. Now, Ukrainian special forces are apparently equipped with ENVG-B night vision devices featuring augmented reality. These advanced devices can detect objects in total darkness, operate in dense fog, and function during sandstorms. I'm sure this is the same footage that I saw like a year ago, but anyway, might be recycled again, or it might be just that this is new footage of the same thing that they are able to utilize. And then another bit of footage here. This is a Russian Izdali 51, a Lancet loitering munition. Is that the updated Lancet, the Delete 51? Anyway, this is taken out by an intercepted drone. Another Russian drone bites dust thanks to the sharp skills of 95th Brigade. And that is something that we are seeing quite frequently. They are definitely doing a much better job of intercepting drones of all types, reconnaissance drones, kamikaze drones, Shahed drones as well. I don't know whether we've seen any Shahed drones taken out in this way, but they're certainly getting better and better at intercepting them. And in fact, we're going to talk about that next. So distance munitions and strikes. We will start with the 100% success rate again for the Ukrainians. 70 drones, so a significant number of drones the Russians sending into Ukrainian airspace. None succeeded in getting to their targets. 46 were shot down. 24 were taken out by electronic warfare or similar. So that is all 70 drones taken out of the sky. Of course, what comes up must go down. So there will be damage on the ground in some places, I am sure. Now, while the US was threatening to invade their neighbors, and while the West seems to be eating itself, Russia just busily gets on and kills civilians with wild abandon. Yesterday, they struck Zaporizhia, middle of Zaporizhia, or, just residential area roads with missiles. So 13 people were killed. It says 18 injured. Well, no, actually it's 109, I think it's the last I've seen, were injured in Zaporizhia after a Russian missile strike on the city. Seem to be several explosions there, so several missiles. Video shows a moment of the strike. Zelensky then responded to that, saying there's nothing more brutal than aerial bombs targeting a city, knowing that ordinary civilians will suffer. Pressure on Russia for its terror is necessary. Supporting the defense of lives in Ukraine is essential. So I suggest we stop threatening Greenland and Denmark, stop threatening Canada, stop threatening the EU, stop threatening Mexico. And if you really want Greenland to protect you from, I wonder who is it that Greenland would protect the US from? What's that country? It's Russia. Yeah, so to protect the US from Russia, how about winning the war in Ukraine? It seems insane that there's all this distraction going on, and there doesn't seem to be this focus on the threat that you are claiming is a threat in order to justify taking Greenland and helping yourselves to rare earth metals and minerals. So we need to, all of us, UK, Europe, South Korea, we need to work out what the real threats are to the world and act accordingly right now. So some horrific footage coming out of Zaporizhia as Russia is doing in broad daylight, literally broad daylight, doing these horrific things. Day of mourning in Zaporizhia, says Tim White. 13 killed in yesterday's attack, 109 others were injured. The cleanup operation has begun. Trams run again through ground zero. I mean, the resilience of the Ukrainians is incredible. I was in Zaporizhia. May well have been really close to that building. Who knows? This is unconscionable, this kind of activity. Right. What else? Kherson. So to add insult to injury or to add death to more death, well, in fact, in this case, actually, I don't think anyone amazingly has died in the Kherson strikes. But Kherson is on the river, the Dnipro River, and it is right on the front line. The Russians were in control of it, then it was liberated, and it was all really happy days in Kherson. But it didn't last long because the Russians started using their drones in Kherson as well as artillery and mortar and whatnot. I stayed in Kherson. I stayed right near the river edge. I could see it from just down the road. I could hear my windows were rattling with the effects of incoming and outgoing artillery through the night. It was interesting being there, but I was somewhat safe. It doesn't sound like I was safe, but I felt somewhat safe. We went out to a cafe. Many places were closed, many places boarded up, but we did go to a cafe. I wonder whether that's still there because I can't imagine anyone really making a good job of living in Kherson. It is getting hammered by everything at the moment. So drones have been picking off civilians willy-nilly. I just wouldn't go back there myself. Now it's been hit by some rocket or missile, says Tim White. Smoke is rising in the city centre. Updated information, multiple aerial guided glide bombs have hit Kherson. Residents say possibly 4 separate explosions in Krebelny and central districts. No word on victims. Every day, Kherson is battered and attempt to terrorize Ukraine's people into submission. Even before this new attack, 3 people have been killed and 9 injured there in just 24 hours. 4 private and 2 multi-story buildings were among those damaged by rockets and drones. It is just, again, to use the same word, it's unconscionable as they are doing this. Really, really horrific. So there you go. I'm just trying to see if there's any latest. So update on today's missile attack at the centre of Kherson. Local council says 3 aerial guided glide bombs hit a kindergarten, a private house, and a local business. However, 4 plumes of smoke were clearly visible. 5 injuries are known so far in Kherson, but no deaths in the multiple attacks. A man 85 was the oldest victim. His wife's also thought to be among the wounded. The other casualties are men aged 52, 56, and 62. New rescuers are being hit with the artillery. I mean, just look, this is Kherson. It's just, how long do we stand aside while the Russians do this? Like, why are we banging on about Greenland while the Russians do this? We should be concerned about the threat that Russia is exacting on Ukraine and the rest of the world in Ukraine. That should be our most singular focus at the moment. Now, the Ukrainians hit Engels airbase, or actually a fuel depot near it. Another fuel container there has apparently exploded. There's some incredible footage coming from Engels area with, all sorts of balls of flame and further damage being done as the problems expand in that oil depot. Absolutely incredible footage. Engels there. You can see that it is in a spot of bother. Another video from the action at the Crystal fuel depot in Engels featuring some interesting radio chatter from emergency workers. They confirm a tank explosion, says Noel reports. That's another explosion. And in fact, they have lost a couple of fire workers there. State of emergency has been declared in Engels. Fuel depot tanks keep detonating and a fire is visible all the way in Saratov. During firefighting efforts, 2 emergency workers were killed and 1 was injured. And last to say is that Engels this morning was covered in smoke. In addition to the fire at the oil depot, a fire has also occurred in a large warehouse. So I don't know if that is another strike. What has happened there? I don't know how close to the fuel depot that is, or whether it is close at all or not. But it's looking like there are problems in Engels, and that's good news for the Ukrainians, as that will possibly make it more difficult for the strategic bombers to fly from there, because there are claims that these oil reserves, or these are fuel reserves for the planes, and if that is the case, then obviously the planes are going to struggle to do their sorties in a regular fashion. But so good for Ukraine there. On to other bits and pieces. The Budapest memorandum is BS. This is a new stamp. Another, they like their iconic stamp. So recently in the Lex Friedman interview, I think it was, Zelensky came out with the quote, the fairly forthright quote, that the Budapest memorandum is BS. So this is the idea that we'll take your nukes off you in exchange for protecting you. And one of the people who signed up to protect them, one of the countries, was Russia, and Russia has now invaded them. So evidently the Budapest memorandum is BS. So the Ukposhta plans to release a new stamp featuring Zelensky's iconic phrase. The stamp reflects Ukraine's frustration with broken security promises and highlights the importance of defending sovereignty. And we have what else to report? Tigran Kyosayan, husband of the propagandist Margarita Simonyan, who's head of RT, has survived clinical death and is in a coma due to heart issues. He had previously suffered 2 heart attacks. His condition is reported as extremely critical. Kyosayan is known for his aggressive anti-Ukrainian rhetoric. No surprise there. In fact, he has said previously, Ukrainians are not brotherly people. They are enemies. They might become brothers again after we defeat them and begin rehabilitating them. So that's very nice. I hope his coma goes particularly well. We thoughts and prayers with you, my good man. thoughts and prayers. Turns out I don't pray. Anton Gerashenko says, in Anapa, Russia's Krasnodar region, the FSB detained and questioned volunteers after they tried to prevent the release of weakened birds washed from fuel oil. So if you remember, there's obviously been these horrific oil tankers sinking in the Kerch Strait that's caused these spillages that have killed lots of wildlife. And the rehabilitation of the wildlife has been very poorly done by the Russians, who have taken these really sad state of affairs, these birds covered in oil off the beaches, and it actually takes a lot of effort. You need to rehabilitate them over quite a long period. They've been taking them off, clean them up, and then probably don't have the money or resources to do anything particularly long term, so then take them back to release them while they're not able to be released and look after themselves, so they just die. So you've then had volunteers trying to stop people doing that, and the FSB have detained and questioned these volunteers after they tried to prevent the release of weakened birds washed from fuel oil. The volunteers tried to interfere, but the attempt was unsuccessful, and the next morning more than 40 dead birds were found on the shore, says Gerashenko. Up to 90% of the birds rescued in Anapa after the Kerch Strait oil spill died during transport, according to Russian Telegram channels, as I reported the other day. And now he says that meanwhile, fuel oil from Russian tankers is already on the coast of Yevpatoria in Russian-occupied Crimea. Fuel oil stains have been spotted on the shore, and the cleanup of the emissions has allegedly already started. So the problem is spreading. And, quote, the birds contaminated with fuel oil are being cleaned and sent for rehabilitation, the so-called authorities say. It is reported that affected birds are already being found on the Georgian Black Sea coast, in particular in Batumi, Chakvi, and Shekvetili. So there you go. That's today's news. Sad news about that ecological disaster. Sad news about all of this, really. It's completely unnecessary. And yet we appear to be, I don't know, with a snake that's eating its own tail at the moment. While all of this is going on, we need to just give everything we possibly bloody can to Ukraine, help them in every single way, and stop this world being consumed by authoritarian ne'er-do-wells. But there you go. That's my opinion. I'm going to stick by it, as I have done for 3 years. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate your support. Really very much do. Any support for the channel will be going towards our trip to Ukraine, whereby it will be fairly, there will be costs involved getting the vehicles from London to Ukraine, but hopefully it will be an experience in being able to report on the journey, report to you from Ukraine, interview some people. We're hoping to have a panel, Jonathan Fink from Silicon Curtain, in both Lviv and Kyiv. So that would be really good, and put together some content that you hopefully will appreciate. In the meantime, I need to finish off the videos from my last trip to Ukraine. Goodness me. Anyway, take care, everybody, and I'll speak to you soon.